Husband vanished 6 weeks after their wedding. 70 years later, she discovered the devastating truth. Billy and Peggy tied the knot in December 1942. After 2 years of dating, Billy was 24 at the time and Peggy was 20. However, a mere 6 weeks later, the unthinkable occurred. Billy was called upon to serve in the US Army and was sent overseas to fight alongside allies in France. Peggy and Billy were about to have breakfast when they were interrupted by a knock on the door. The effects of the strict war rationing was felt by every family. Billy hurried to answer the door, only to find a postman waiting with an envelope from the War Department addressed to him. The postman handed Billy the envelope and left, his expression filled with sorrow, knowing the news inside was not good. The letter that had just been given to Billy was what most young American men feared during the intense World War II. Billy's heart sank as he glanced at the official War Department stamp printed boldly on it. Then he made his way back to Penny, who was eagerly anticipating his return, with a look of complete anxiety on her face. "Who's the letter from, Billy?" Peggy asked quietly, her voice filled with concern. Billy could only manage to utter, "The War Department." Upon hearing that, Peggy was overwhelmed with emotion. "Oh no, this can't be happening to us. Not now. Not so soon after getting married. Not when we haven't even started a family together," Peggy exclaimed. Billy, struggling to open the tightly sealed envelope, interrupted her complaints. He pleaded with Peggy to allow him to read the contents of the letter. At Billy's request, Peggy hushed, although her anxiety remained evident. Billy received a letter informing him of his selection to join the Allies in Europe, where he would be fighting against the forces of Germany. In addition, the letter directed him to the nearest US military base within a week of receiving the letter. Peggy was already on the floor in tears, even before Billy had finished reading the letter. Billy did his best to comfort her, reminding her that the letter wasn't the end of the world, and that the country relied on him, along with countless other young men, some even younger than him. After Peggy regained her composure, she quickly stood up and tightly hugged Billy, as if her entire existence relied on it. They stayed embraced for what felt like a long time. They forgot about their breakfast. After a week had passed, the moment had arrived for Billy to depart. He gathered a handful of personal belongings, and Peggy bid him farewell at the train station. As Billy prepared to board the train, Peggy showered him with affectionate hugs and kisses. The operator eventually had to intervene, urging the couple to say goodbye quickly as the train was about to depart. Peggy finally let go of Billy, ending their embrace. She waved goodbye to him until the train vanished from her view as he boarded. Afterwards, Peggy went back home and let her tears flow until she fell asleep. Life became incredibly difficult for Peggy after Billy left. She longed for Billy's presence, finding solace in gazing at his photos for hours on end. She developed a routine of smelling each garment he left behind, hoping to detect even the slightest trace of his scent. Half a year after Billy's departure, Peggy discovered a letter waiting in the mailbox. Her joy knew no bounds as she opened the letter and immediately recognized Billy's handwriting. She eagerly tore open the letter and quickly read its contents. "Hey Peggy, the love of my life, my sweetheart, my darling. I'm currently waiting for the beachhead of Normandy, France, to let you know that I'm safe and doing well. I'll definitely return to you. I have deep affection for you, Peggy, and my love for you will endure eternally, my dear. Goodbye for now." Peggy carefully studied the letter, committing every word to memory. The letter provided her with solace and reignited her optimism that Billy was still alive and would return to her. She patiently awaited his arrival. Regrettably, after just a few months after Billy's letter, Peggy was faced with the most shocking moment of her existence. She was notified by the War Department that her husband, Private Billy Harris, had been killed in action during Operation near Normandy, France. After finishing the reading, Peggy promptly threw it away and proceeded to roll on the floor. She wept until her eyes became fiery red. The intensity of her cries promoted the next-door neighbor to quickly come to her door. The elderly woman repeatedly knocked on Peggy's door, but Peggy did not respond. She remained on the floor without moving for 2 consecutive days. She would sob herself to sleep right where she lay, wake up, and then begin crying all over again. The elderly woman reached out to other neighbors, concerned about Peggy's mental well-being. However, Peggy remained adamant about not allowing any others inside. Left with no alternative, they reached out to the authorities. Peggy finally stood up to let them in after they arrived. After some time, Peggy found herself unable to shed any more tears. After approximately 3 days of fasting, she eventually began to consume small amounts of food. The situation did not improve. Unfortunately, Peggy quickly turned to alcohol and started drinking heavily to cope with her sorrows. Peggy was completely overwhelmed and in disarray. She preferred to stay indoors most of the time and going outside only to purchase food and, naturally, restock her supply of alcohol. This unfortunate situation persisted for approximately 3 months until Peggy received another letter from the War Department. The War Department? What are they requesting from me now? Haven't they already taken so much from me? Peggy pondered to herself as she ripped the envelope apart, still feeling a bit lightheaded from her previous frustration. The letter revealed that the War Department had sent an apology to Peggy, informing her that there was a possibility that Billy was still alive, but he was currently missing in action. They clarified that there was a mix-up with the tag on the deceased soldier's body, which they had mistakenly identified as Billy's, but it actually read Bill Harris. Despite the lack of explicit confirmation regarding Billy's survival, the letter provided Peggy with the necessary motivation to regain her spirits. She leaped with delight and felt a surge of energy, optimistic that Billy was still out there somewhere and would eventually return to her. Peggy underwent a rapid transformation. She cleared out all the bottles she had accumulated at her house and began to engage in more social activities. She diligently wrote numerous letters to Billy and sent them through the Red Cross to Normandy, France, where she thought he was still located. Peggy's letters went unanswered, yet she clung to the hope that Billy was still alive. She continued to write and patiently waited for him. After a few months, the war finally came to an end. The triumphant American soldiers were slowly making their way back to the United States, ship after ship, and yet there was no trace of Billy, not even a letter from him. Peggy attended every welcoming home parade event held in different American cities, hoping to catch a glimpse of Billy, but her efforts were in vain. Billy was nowhere to be found. Later on, Peggy began writing numerous letters to the War Department, seeking information about her husband, but the responses she received were consistently identical. Her husband remained missing in action, and the department continued to investigate the matter. They promised to keep her informed of any new developments. Nevertheless, Peggy remained undeterred. She continued to pray, hope, and patiently await Billy's return. It had been 2 decades since Billy's departure, and Peggy had reached the age of 40. Peggy was aware that time was passing. After 20 long years, her friends had all settled down and started families. She was still patiently waiting for Billy. Adding to her distress, a number of her friends and close family members began urging her to move on from Billy, seek out another partner, get married, and rebuild her life. Many people even suggested that Billy may have left the battlefront, fallen in love with a French woman, and now be living happily in a quiet French village with her. They said he had no intention of returning to the United States due to concerns about being apprehended by the authorities. Peggy found herself in a difficult situation with limited options. She had the option to keep waiting for Billy, even though there was a growing possibility of growing old, lonely, and unloved if he didn't return, based on all the signs. On the other hand, she could pursue a new romance and potentially betray Billy's love in the unlikely event of his return. It was a difficult decision for Peggy, but she chose to stay loyal to Billy. She was unwavering in her commitment to his love, firmly believing in his loyalty to her. By this stage, Peggy had become a mere semblance of her former self. Her parents had passed away, and many of her friends had abandoned her, convinced that she was irrational for continuing to wait for Billy, despite their efforts to persuade her otherwise. Peggy felt shattered and isolated. Everything in this world failed to bring her happiness anymore. She survived solely on the recollection of her time with Billy, which now felt like distant memories. This was the situation until another person entered her life. He went by the name of Ben. Ben, a 52-year-old widower, had recently moved into the flat next to Penny's. Ben remained vibrant and attractive, even in his late years. He appeared more youthful than his actual age, and possessed a pleasant, baritone voice. Peggy was captivated when she heard him singing on the balcony one evening. His sweet voice resonated with her instantly. Driven by curiosity, she began quietly observing him sing from her balcony every evening. Ben discovered her in the act one evening and extended an invitation for coffee. Peggy surprisingly agreed to it and respected the invitation. During their casual drink of coffee and sandwiches, they engaged in conversation. Ben shared with Peggy the story of his late wife and how he leads a solitary life without any children. Peggy, in return, shared everything about Billy with him. Ben was immediately smitten. Ben became increasingly fixated on Peggy, going as far as preparing meals for her and personally delivering them to her apartment, eagerly observing her as she ate. Ben would often playfully tease Peggy about her weight, since she had lost a significant amount due to her sedentary lifestyle after Billy left. After long, they began taking leisurely walks together in the evenings. It was during one of these walks that Ben mustered up the courage to express his feelings to Peggy and invite her on a date. After some time, Peggy reluctantly agreed to go on a date with him. However, it was clear to both Ben and Peggy herself that she had no genuine interest in the relationship. She continued to yearn for Billy's comeback. One evening, Ben decided to pay Peggy a surprise visit. He discovered her in tears as she gazed at Billy's photograph and perused the sole letter she had dispatched from the battlefield. Ben embraced Peggy and offered her comfort, assuring her of his unwavering support. They experienced a surprising moment, and Peggy eventually drifted off to sleep in his embrace. However, Ben's expectation that Peggy would become more open to him after that event was proven to be incorrect. Regrettably, Peggy's attitude towards him remained unchanged. Peggy didn't have strong feelings for him. She just wasn't interested. In her eyes, he was nothing more than a companion, one who held a special place in her heart. Despite Ben's sincere attempts to win Peggy's heart, his efforts seemed to have little effect, as if he were trying to have an impact on an impenetrable barrier. For Peggy's 41st birthday, Ben went above and beyond to ensure that she had a day that was truly memorable. He went out of his way to make her happy, preparing her favorite meal, selecting her preferred wines, and playing her beloved music on his record player. He went out of his way to make Peggy's day extra special, surprising her with a massive cake adorned with 41 flickering candles and filling the dining room with delightful smell. Afterwards, he asked her to join him for dinner. Following a delightful dinner and a couple glasses of wine, Ben gracefully knelt down and asked the question. Regrettably, Peggy politely declined, expressing her inability to provide him with the love that he deserved. She assured him that he was a kind-hearted individual who deserved a partner who would deeply love and appreciate him in a lifelong commitment, rather than someone who felt damaged and broken like she did. Ben made a heartfelt plea, expressing his understanding of her need for love and offering his support in healing her broken heart. However, Peggy expressed her concern that she would only be a burden to him. She gently kissed his forehead, grabbed her bag, and slowly walked away, leaving Ben feeling sad. That night, Ben made the decision to part ways with Peggy for good, marking the end of their time together. Following her brief time with Ben, Peggy found herself right back where she started. For the next 30 years, she found herself trapped in a cycle of severe depression and overwhelming loneliness, endlessly waiting for Billy's return. Over the course of the 3 long decades, her loyal dogs and cats were her sole companions. 70 years had passed since Billy was sent to France, and now, at 90 years old, Peggy was a frail, elderly woman. However, she couldn't help but continuously discuss Billy and eagerly anticipate his comeback. During this time, Billy's cousin, Alton Harvey, made a promise to assist her in uncovering the truth about what had truly happened with Billy. With determination, Alton began his search through the vast army archives. He dedicated a significant amount of resources and energy to tackle the challenging task. He faced rejection as military office doors were forcefully closed on him, and he was denied access to certain classified military documents. Despite facing opposition and even threats from military officers, Alton remained determined. After an entire year of searching, he finally discovered what he had been seeking: Billy's military file. The chilling inscription, KIA, Killed in Action, was found on January 17, 1944, on the outskirts of Normandy, France. After conducting additional investigations, Alton was disappointed to learn that an employee at the War Department had carelessly misplaced Billy's file for an extended period of time, only to have it recently discovered. It's no surprise that Peggy always got the same false missing in action response whenever she reached out to the department about Billy. After a year of dedicated service in the war, Billy was finally given the opportunity to take a much-needed break and was allowed to return home in July 1944. He had completed a remarkable 100 missions in the Air Force. Unfortunately, fate had different intentions. Billy had waited for several more days for the next available ship because the one he was supposed to board was filled with wounded soldiers. As a way to occupy himself, he was given another task, which unfortunately ended up being his last. While flying over the town of Lavenne, Billy's plane was struck by enemy anti-air force artillery, resulting in a catastrophic crash. Surprisingly, Billy had plenty of chances to bail out of the plane, but he chose to put others before himself and stayed on board. Ejecting would have led to the plane crashing into Lavenne, causing the loss of numerous innocent lives. Instead, he stayed on board, expertly steering the aircraft towards the woods, an act of bravery that resulted in his own sacrifice, but saved the town and its residents. Alton also found that the final surviving member of Billy's flight crew, a 92-year-old veteran named Gurlo. Together, they visited Peggy, to provide her with the closure that she had been patiently anticipating for several years. When Gurlo and Alton visited Peggy, it was an incredibly moving experience. Alton shared the contents of Billy's files that he had discovered with her. Peggy's eyes were filled with tears, yet she refrained from crying out loud, having already exhausted her usual quota of tears for the day. She posed a straightforward question to Gurlo, inquiring about the painlessness of her Billy's passing. Gurlo replied to Peggy, confirming, "Yes, Peggy, he did. And do you know what he kept yelling before the plane crashed? He continued to shout, 'Oh my Peggy, oh my love, I will always cherish you eternally, my Peggy, even in the world beyond.'" Peggy couldn't help but burst into tears at this revelation, unable to contain her emotions any longer. She fondly recalled the deep love they shared, and a sense of satisfaction and pride in her unwavering loyalty to Billy. After a few weeks, Peggy and Alton made a trip to Normandy, France, to visit the burial site of her dear Billy. Upon arriving in Normandy, Peggy was surprised to learn that Billy was laid to rest in one of the region's most renowned cemeteries. She discovered from the locals that Billy was highly respected as a hero in the town of Levant, near Normandy. 3 times a year, the locals gathered to march down the road, honoring the brave individual who sacrificed their lives to liberate France from the Nazis during World War II. They began by reading the names of the fallen soldiers, including Billy's. After finding answers about the truth behind Billy's disappearance, Peggy found solace and started leading a fulfilling life. She dedicated herself to supporting widows of army veterans, guiding them through the journey of healing. She discovered a strong affection for orphans and would frequently visit nearby orphanages to engage with the children.